Hey guys, it's Kevin again, going to be a review for something that kind of came out of nowhere, but I've been wanting to talk about this ever since I initially started, and that is for the first season of the Netflix show, The End of the Fucking World. And what The End of the Fucking World is essentially about is we center on these two characters. First off, we have James, and James is basically kind of defined himself as this, basically proclaimed psychopath, and, he kills small animals a lot, and he's done a lot of really messed up stuff. And then there's this girl, Alyssa, who he ends up meeting, who immediately takes a liking to him. She's someone who, she doesn't really have that great of a life either, but he gets the sense that, he's kind of bored, and he wants to make his first actual human kill, and he wants Alyssa to be that said first kill. But Alyssa has more in mind when she starts to get tired of her life, or, she kind of makes this proposition to James where she wants the two of them to go on the run, and through some unforeseen circumstances, these two are brought together in a pretty big way, which eventually causes them to change their disguises and all this other stuff, and also, they start to learn more about each other, and that's really all I'm going to say. So The End of the Fucking World in general, I'm going to be honest, I knew nothing, absolutely nothing about the show going into it, and usually I do, but that's due to the fact for two reasons. One, because the fact that I didn't do that big, sort of video where I talk about all the shows I'm looking forward to and all the shows that are coming out. I really had no prior knowledge about the show, but also because of the fact that it kind of just came out of nowhere. It's one of those shows where Netflix just kind of dropped a trailer the week it was coming out, and I can't stand it when they do that. But I figured, why not? I really didn't have any plans on checking it out because just the title in general, it seemed kind of obnoxious to me, and I didn't think it was going to be anything that great. But then everyone started talking about it. It's gotten all this buzz and all this kind of stuff. It seems like it's kind of come out of nowhere, so I figured I might as well check it out, and I'm very happy that I did, because not only did this show turn out to be probably one of the biggest surprises already of this year, but definitely one of the most well put together miniseries I've seen in quite a while. The End of the Fucking World is definitely one of Netflix's best shows in a while. I really did enjoy what I got with this show. It's a very simple show overall, but definitely has a lot to say about society and about teenagers in general. But we're just getting into it, starting off with the cast. And right off the bat, that is absolutely the thing that anchors this show. If it wasn't for these two performances, from the main kids, I don't think the show would be as good. I mean, they absolutely carry this entire show. Let's first talk about Lawther as the character of James, who I think is perfectly casted. Now, I have seen him before. He was in To the Bone and other things, but this is easily the best performance I've ever seen from him. I really did love this character. James is someone who, throughout the show, even though he, kind of proclaims himself as this serial killer, you can tell that in reality, he is very indecisive, and he doesn't really know what he wants to do in life. So this is really the only path he has set for himself, because it really seems like the only foreseeable direction. And this is why he has gone into this more murderous path. But throughout the show, he really does have this incredible arc, especially when you, consider how he is at the end of the show. He really does go through a pretty big transformation, and I really did love seeing that. And Lawther really brings a lot of pathos to this character. Even though this guy, like I said, is sort of this really deranged, sort of merciless psychopath in the beginning, you really do care for him. You see that he really is just this confused kid, and I really do love where they end up taking his character. He's really fun at points, but you also really do feel bad for him. He's got his own stuff going on in his life, and I thought he really did an incredible job here. He absolutely carried the show, and I really do love what we got out of him in this performance. But just as good as him is Jessica Barden as the character of Alyssa, who, similar to James, I have seen Jessica Barden in things before. She was, in fact, in Penny Dreadful. But this, once again, is the first thing where she really stuck out to me. And what I really love about Alyssa is she's not nearly as messed up as James, but she does have her own stuff going on in her life. She doesn't really come from that great of a background. She really doesn't know where she wants to go in life. And the way that these two really do connect and the similarities between them, I really did enjoy seeing. There is definitely, a lot of juxtaposition there, but there also is a lot of similarities, and I thought their chemistry easily is the best thing about the show. These two just work so well together. You love seeing them kind of change each other for the better, and again, they each go through these really incredible arcs, and I really did love their characters. Thought they both did an incredible job in the show, and again, if these two actors weren't as good, I think the whole show pretty much would fall apart, and they really did an incredible job here. And then the rest of the cast I thought also was very strong. No one really matches to the length of Lawther and Barden. I think, again, they really do anchor the show for the most part. But I thought the two cops, Gemma, Whelan, and Wunmi, Mosaku, they overall do a really good job as Noon and Donahue. I thought they definitely were really great. Someone I really want to talk about comes in much later in the show, but it's this character, Leslie, who is Alyssa's estranged father. He doesn't come into, like, the latter half of the season, but Barry Ward really did a great job here. This character, he's very complex, because sometimes you think, oh, maybe he's good, maybe he actually is trying to be a good father, but he also has his own stuff that he's dealing with, and I really did like where they took him. I thought he really did a great job in this show, and really everyone I thought gave a very strong performance. There really wasn't anyone who I thought was bad, and that's something I will absolutely give this show. But now let's get to the directing and the writing, because easily that is one of the best things about the show. The directing right off the bat, I really do love the directing to the show, because the whole show, even though it has this really messed up plot, which, believe me, it really is some very, like I said, unnerving stuff in the first few episodes. It really turns into this sort of sweet romantic comedy that also happens to have this really dark edge to it, and I think those two tones are very well realized. It's basically a dark romantic comedy, and that's something I really did enjoy, but it also is very much grounded in reality. It's not just about watching these two fall in love. It's more about how these two really do change each other for the better, and I think, again, those two tones were just realized very well. I was laughing pretty frequently throughout this entire show. There are a lot of fun moments there. But also, like I said, there's a lot of dramatic stuff as well. We really do grow to love these two characters. Even if we don't necessarily start out that way, by the end of the show, you love these two characters, and you want to see good things happen. When things are really not going their way at all, you really do feel terrible for them, and it quite literally does feel like the end of the fucking world. That's why the show is called The End of the Fucking World, because pretty much everything for them feels that way, and you really do feel for these two characters, and it's not one of those shows where it's just like, oh, look at these teens, look at the problems they have that really aren't that big of a deal. And no, these are pretty big problems, and they do make a lot of life-altering decisions in the show that could really have a lot of positive and negative consequences on, their future overall, and I did like the way that was done. This is not one of those shows where, I enjoy these shows like Riverdale and 13 Reasons Why, where, you have regular teenage problems. They are going through that, but this show kind of takes it into a slightly different, more dark direction, and I think it worked very well for the show. So, again, if you're looking for something that is a little bit more grounded in not as grounded in reality, and is a little bit more creative and different, I think that's definitely, something you should consider with the show. But the writing really is what sticks out to me here, because the writing is some of the most brilliantly well realized I've seen in any show of this kind. One of the things I absolutely love about the show is the dual narrative. Essentially, we're dealing with two different types of shows here, because sure, we do have James and Alyssa coming together, but throughout the whole show, we do get into their actual perspectives and how they actually feel. There'll be a scene where Alyssa will say something to James when in reality she's feeling something else, or when James is saying something to Alyssa and he's trying to cover up the fact that he does want to kill her. And there's a lot of fun stuff they do with that. There's definitely is played for laughs quite a lot in the show. Especially, like I said, with James. He literally wants to kill Alyssa, and he's very annoyed by her for the first few episodes, even though he's trying to act very normal and it's not really working out. Alyssa's also very much into a lot of sexual stuff, and James doesn't really know know how to do that. So it is definitely very fun, but it also, again, gives us a lot of context into who these characters really are, why they've made these decisions, why they've gone through this path, and I think, again, it just really plays into how well constructed the show is when it comes to these characters. I think that was definitely very well handled for the most part. But again, you know, what the dual narrative also does is it really gets us to sympathize with these characters, because this is not one of those shows where it's like, oh, look how sad these characters' lives are. No, it's a lot more authentic, and it feels a lot more subtle than that. It's not like they'll just do a whole episode in trying to make you feel bad for these characters. No, the revelations with them, they are pretty gradual. In fact, even the last episode, there's still a lot of stuff we don't know. We don't really find out everything we need to know until the last episode, and I thought it was honestly very smart for them to do that. You know, they easily could have just had a lot of repetitive conversations, and they don't really do that. And you know, again, when you find out what these characters went through, you're like, oh, okay, that actually makes sense. Like for James, for example, again, we're dealing with someone who is a bit of a psychopath, but when a big revelation about him actually does come out later in the show, you can really understand, okay, this is why he's kind of secluded himself. This is why he doesn't really want to have any feelings. This is why he kind of shuts himself from the rest of the world and he doesn't act like a normal person, because again, it just seems like the only plausible sort of path for him. He doesn't really see any other way of life, and it honestly is pretty sad when you think about it, and I think, again, the show handled that very well. Now, I also should mention that there is a pretty big shift in the plot at the end of the third episode, and I'd love to talk about it, but again, I'm going to go through this without spoilers, and then I'll go through spoilers a little bit later, and that's just because of the fact that I don't really want you guys to know a lot going in the show. I didn't really know a lot, and I was really pleasantly surprised with, you know, where it ended up going. It goes into a really crazy direction, but it really just makes the show that much better, and again, the chemistry between those two pretty much does become, I think, sort of like the main standpoint of the show, and I think that was definitely a very smart choice, because those two characters are so well realized, and when they come together, again, there's a lot of revelations there's a lot of these two getting to know each other, and I just really did love where the show did go in that regard. I thought that was definitely very well handled. And again, the other thing I love about the show is that even though it does take this crazy turn, the show never really gets all that complicated. It's a very quick watch. Every episode's like, you know, 22 to 19 to 22 minutes, which is kind of unprecedented for Netflix. Most Netflix shows run very long. That's probably because this is also a UK show. But it's a very simple story, and that's something I really did love. I loved how simple the story really was here. It never really gets that complex. It never really gets that overcomplicated, even though there is a lot of rich adult themes in this show. And there definitely are a lot of different things it has to say, which I really do enjoy. I really do like, you know, the different sort of meanings and things that the show really does talk about. There's a lot of stuff in here, you know, about abandonment and about kind of not really knowing who you are, discovering, you know, who you really want to be, you know, just a lot of things like that. A lot of themes in that regard. There's a lot of things about abuse. That's a very prominent theme in this show. A theme of justice, you know, how does the criminal justice system work, and I think that was very well handled, but for the most part, it really does boil down to these two characters, and again, I really did enjoy seeing that. And like I said, while there definitely is a lot of heavy stuff in the show, that doesn't take away the fact that there definitely is a lot, it's just as much fun as I think there is that heavy stuff, because yes, this narrative is primarily, you know, giving these kids the opportunity to run away, and I'm sure that's something that when we're teenagers, and I mean, I've thought about this many times, you know, if we're given the opportunity to run away, what are we able to do? It's pretty much filled with endless possibilities, you know, all kinds of things ranging from just not wearing seatbelts to going to arcades to, you know, going to these hotels, these exotic places. I mean, there's all kinds of things that these two do end up doing, and it definitely is a lot of fun, and that's something I definitely did love. While the show does definitely get darker as the season does go on, that fun one element, that really does make you feel lively and playful is still very much there. And again, I think that really is due to how strong the two performances are. And that's something I definitely did enjoy throughout the season. They easily could have just taken it into a much darker direction and kind of just stripped away the comedic layers. But both of those tones, like I said, were very well realized. That's something I really did enjoy throughout the majority of this season. I will say, though, not all of the writing is that well handled, because aside from Alyssa and James, the other characters in this show, while they are good, they just aren't as in-depth as the other two are, as our two main leads are. And that's understandable. The whole show pretty much is carried by them. But James and Alyssa's parents, for example, they're in the show, but they don't really have one specific arc. You're not really caring for them as characters. I mean, you do care about them, but not in the way you care about James and Alyssa, and that's especially the case when it comes to these two cops. These two cops that are introduced in, like, episode 5 of the show, I really did not care about at first. I thought they were honestly really boring. Some of their scenes really were taking me out of the show at points. But there is a scene with them at the end of the 7th episode, and then I really start to get into their characters, because at first you're just kind of thinking, oh, these two cops are just here because we need some sort of momentum to move the story forward, but then you realize the show really is saying a lot about the criminal justice system and the different sort of perspectives that police officers can have. One of the officers, Noon, is a lot more sympathetic towards these kids and tries to give them the benefit of the doubt, while Donahue is much more by the book and pretty much just sees it as, oh, these kids did this one specific thing, they should very well just go to jail because they are in fact criminals, and there really is no other way to it. And I really did love seeing their different sort of, the ideology of that. I really did enjoy seeing their clashing ideals when it comes to that, and I thought that ended up being one of the most compelling elements of the entire show. And I was really surprised because, again, I initially wasn't really into them at all, but after the 7th episode, I really got into their characters, and I think from there, I pretty much did stay on board with them after that, and I thought that was honestly very well handled, and I really did love where they did end up taking their characters there. I thought that was honestly, like I said, very strong for the most part. The cinematography as well, I really do enjoy. It's very grounded in reality. The show is based off a comic strip, but it never really feels like a comic book. It's definitely very well handled in that way. Yes, it is sometimes very lighthearted, but like I said, when shit gets real, it gets very real, and this isn't a show where it's trying to romanticize a psychopath. I mean, if you think that's really what the show's trying to be, that's not what it is. I mean, they show very well, no, this is definitely a very wrong way to look at life. This is not at all the way that someone should go about life, but that, again, is just kind of the only direction that James has, and I think, again, that was very well handled. I really do love the cinematography. The score is really good, and the editing, like I said, the show is extremely fast-paced, pretty much from the first episode, and that's actually the reason why I didn't review the series premiere initially, because that's usually what I do with shows. I review the series premiere, then I review the season. The reason I didn't review the series premiere is simply because I did not think I had enough information about the show and about the story and the characters to really say anything. I didn't think I had that, an accurate enough thoughts on these characters to really say anything about the show, and that is something I will give the show. The first few episodes, it is a little too quickly paced, and there is a lot of stuff that does feel kind of broad, and you don't really have that connection until I'd say that either the end of the 2nd episode, and especially the 3rd episode, that's really when I started to get into the show, and I think for most people that is definitely the case. I've watched many reviews, and most people have agreed with me with that, but again, I think it just really, it boils down to the fact that if you really watch this show, it feels less like a TV season and more just like one big movie. That really is what this is, because every episode kind of carries into the next, and I think that's something that was very well handled. This is a show that's kind of designed for the binge model, and I think that was definitely something I did very much enjoy about the show. With all that said, guys, I really do want to get into spoilers overall. If you guys have not seen the first series of The End of the Fucking World, do not watch the rest of this review. These are definitely major spoilers moving forward, and it's, a lot of stuff that I'm going to talk about what I think is going to happen in Season 2, all that good stuff, so let's just get into it. So first of all, I want to talk about the main sort of mystery going on. Of course, as we know, there is that character Koch, who they do become entangled with, and the second they are with him, this guy's not good news at all. He's definitely going to lead them on a bad path. I definitely did not expect for things to get as fucked up as it really did, where it turns out this guy is actually a serial killer, and you can see that James really does start to care for Alyssa in this sense. He doesn't want anything bad to happen to her, and it's a pretty big shift for James, but to me, I saw it more as James is realizing the true implications of what this could do for him and what actually could happen if he does decide to become a serial killer. Something that I think, this is just a little too close to home for him. The fact that this guy is a proclaimed serial killer and he's killed all these people. James is realizing, no, I don't really want to do that anymore. And he kills this guy, I think, as a way to kind of repent for what he really wanted to do and to kind of, take Alyssa under his wing and maybe make it up to her, sort of what he's trying to do there. And I really did love the way the third episode ends, because again, it is very crazy. She obviously realizes that he is a killer and he's capable of this, and I mean, he does very much do what he wants to do. He does, in fact, make his first kill. So you could very well say, oh, he's just doing this so he has a chance to kill someone, but he had multiple attempts to kill Alyssa, and he just couldn't do it. As we see in the third episode, he just can't go through with it, and of course, they do end up murdering the guy. Throughout the rest of the show, they're pretty much on the run from this, and I thought that was definitely very well handled. I like that the two of them are on the run, but I like that Alyssa is pretty much just as guilty because she kind of provoked him in that way, and I definitely did like seeing that, but I really did love we end up going in the latter half of the show, because obviously, we do eventually get down to the fact that, they meet Alyssa's actual father, who at first she thinks is this great guy. He seems really nice, and he's not really giving her any problems, especially when it's compared to her more abusive father and, sort of all of the just really bad stuff she had to go through. This guy in comparison seems a lot better, and, she really thinks that maybe she actually could have, somewhat of a decent life with him, but we realize that's definitely not the case. This guy is very much a heathen drug dealer. There's a lot of things he's keeping from her, and it's sad to see. You want things to go well for Alyssa, but it just does not work out that way, and again, that really does play into the realism of the show. Sometimes we think this is the best path for us, and it's really not, and that's similar to James as being a psychopath. He thought that was the best path for him, and he realizes it really wasn't. And again, I think that really plays into the main message of the show, which is all about kind of deciding your own path and realizing what could actually happen if you go in that direction. And I think that was definitely very well handled here. But of course, the end of the show, we get to the two, they're on the run. Alyssa's dad ends up running over that dog. They bury the dog, and this is also the time where they really do confess a lot of things to each other. I think James really does profess his love for Alyssa in this scene. He talks about how his mother did in fact kill herself, and he watched it happen and he didn't stop it, and ever since then, he's kind of lacked a lot of feelings, and he hasn't had that great relation with his dad, not because he doesn't like his dad, because, I mean, we've seen it. His dad is a great guy. He really is someone who cares for his son, even though he knows who his son really is. He knows the violent path his son wants to kind of undergo. He still is very supportive, and it's because of the fact that James's father is still alive and his mother's not, and he just can't connect with him in that way anymore, and Alyssa really is the person that made him realize the true potential he has, and I thought that honestly was a very well handled scene. But obviously eventually we realize that Alyssa's dad did in fact rat them out. She ends up stabbing him, which was an incredible scene, especially again given how fucked up most of her family life is and all the stuff she's gone through. It really just felt like a triumphant moment for her, and James has an opportunity at this point. He could either run away with Alyssa, or he can run away by himself to basically give her the life that she's always wanted, to give her that freedom. And what does he do? He basically says that he did it all and that Alyssa had nothing to do with it. And this is partially true. You know, he did kill the guy, but I do think Alyssa did have somewhat of a hand in, you know, killing this guy in some way, and he basically does take the blame for it. And again, it really brings his character full circle. This is his one act of selflessness. This is his way where he realizes his purpose was never to murder Alyssa and to become a psychopath. His purpose is to sacrifice himself and give her a better life, and you know, let Alyssa, you know, basically become who she wants to be. And unfortunately, she has to do all that without him. And, you know, then it does cut to black. At the end, we see he is, in fact, shot. Now, there's a lot of ways to interpret this. A lot of people have said, oh, there's definitely going to be a season 2. And there very well could be, definitely. I think there definitely is a possibility that there could be a season 2. But on the other hand, I think, you know, the way it was handled, it felt pretty definitive. It felt like this was the best way to close out James's arc. And I think what the show is really trying to say is that sometimes in life, you know, sure, you'll have these growing relationships, but eventually the whole show was kind of like a modern day Bonnie and Clyde in that sense. The only difference is that it doesn't end with Bonnie and Clyde. You know, James is a lot less selfish than Clyde was to Bonnie, and because of that, he wanted to sacrifice himself for her. And I don't know, you know, after that, I don't know if we really need a season 2. Now, it's very possible. A lot of people said, oh, they did the whole book, you know, there's no other way for them to go. Well, remember, The Leftovers did the whole book in the first season, and seasons 2 and 3, if anything, not by, you know, going off book, made the show that much better. It made it more unpredictable. It worked. It really lent itself to how much better it was and how much more in-depth of a show it ended up becoming, because, again, we never really know where it was going to go, and they could very well do that with the show, but I don't know. I think this is one of those shows that works better as one season. I don't know if we really need a season 2. I feel like there's going to be one because of how much of a hit this really has been, but there definitely is a lot of ways to look at it. Personally, I'm fine with the way it ended. I think it definitely is the right way for the show to go out overall, but I am interested in seeing if maybe they do end up taking it to season 2, perhaps. You know, I do think it'd be interesting is maybe explore these characters just a little bit more. But other than that, I'm very satisfied with this ending. I really did love the way things did close out. It really does bring James's character full circle. Alyssa's now going to be able to basically be on her own, and she's going to be able to pretty much get away from this. Even though we end the show with her getting arrested, you know, Noon made it very clear that she's only going to be arrested for manslaughter. You know, she's not going to be put in the electric chair. She's not going to be killed for this. It's only going to be for manslaughter, and it's not going to be forever. And I do think they ended the show in a very, very positive way. I mean, it doesn't seem positive because, again, James did get shot from this, but in many ways it is because, again, Alyssa's able to walk away from this, and I think that was honestly the best way to end it. So overall, guys, The End of the Fucking World is an incredible show that really did come out of nowhere. It's a show that at first glance, I can understand why some would be turned off by it or some would not be interested, but I'm going to say this, give it a chance, really. It's a much better show than I ever could have hoped it would be. It's really realistic in terms of how teens really are. Again, it really is about choosing your own path in life and realizing who you really want to be, and it puts its own sort of spin on that. It also is very much a modern-day Bonnie and Clyde. It's completely anchored by these two performances, which I think are pretty much career, you know, I think these pretty much are stepping stones for these two actors moving forward. I think we're definitely going to see a lot more from Alex Lawther and Jessica Barden moving forward because they both have tons of talent, and I really do want to see them more stuff ASAP. But overall, guys, like I said, I really did love the show overall. Besides those few flaws it did have, this show really did take me by surprise. It really did come out of nowhere for me. It's one of the best things I've seen in Netflix in quite some time, and I'm definitely going to give Season 1 of The End of the Fucking World overall an A-. So overall, guys, in my review, the first season of The End of the Fucking World, like I said, I don't know if this is just going to be one season or if they're going to make a season 2, so that's why I am saying season 1 for now. Either way, guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you guys saw the show overall. You haven't seen it, loved your thoughts in it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.